to the Bite Size Interviews. Today I've got Rosie Claverton. Welcome to Bite Size Interviews, Rosie.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Rosie grew up in Devon, daughter to a Sri Lankan father and a Norfolk mother, surrounded by folk mythology and surly sheep. Thanks for that, Rosie, giving me
You're
that
welcome.
tongue twister. She moved to Cardiff to study medicine and adopted Wales as her home. Her first short film, Dragon Chasers, aired on BBC Wales in autumn 2012. She co-wrote the groundbreaking series of short films The Underwater Realm. Her Cardiff-based crime series, The Amy Lane Mysteries, debuted in 2014. Between writing and medicine, she blogs about psychiatry and psychology for writers in her Freudian Script series, advocating for accurate and sensitive portrayals of people with mental health problems in fiction. She is a co-founder of #SciWrite, a monthly Twitter chat about mental health and psychology in fiction. Currently exiled to London to train in psychiatry, she lives with her journalist husband and their pet hedgehog. That's different.
Yes, he's sleeping, so he won't be guest starring today, I'm afraid.
He's not going to be making a racket then for us.
No,
That's
he'll be
good.
all right.
Rosie, your series of novels have a female protagonist, Amy Lane, who is agoraphobic. You're working in medicine as a junior psychiatrist. Was it important to you to have mental health represented in crime fiction?
It was kind of a bit of an accident, really. I wanted to write a crime series, and then these two characters just popped into my head, fully formed, really. Jason, the ex-con, and then Amy, the agoraphobic hacker. But then when I started writing it, I realised that this was really important to me, that somebody with a mental health problem could have a job, even if it's a bit of an unconventional job, could, contribute something that was really worthwhile, even though she didn't feel it at the time. And the more I wrote it, the more I realized that I really wanted her to be this person who shows mental health and like living with mental health, the good things, the bad things, the struggles of it. And particularly though I didn't really want to go down too deeply into that rabbit hole. I didn't want it to become my other job. I didn't want to get into the details of it or how it would work because it wasn't that important to me. That said, the fourth book, I kind of take a detour into a mental health unit, which is something I hadn't wanted to do, but actually now that I'm there, I'm really enjoying it. But I think I needed to establish that first before I went down into it so that you get to know the characters and that she's Amy first and she's not just her illness.
Yeah.
I think you see that quite a lot when a character has a chronic health problem of any kind. They just become their whole health problem and there's nothing more to them. I didn't want that for her.
What do you see as the main misrepresentations of mental health in fiction today?
I think there are kind of three main groups. You kind of see characters you're meant to fear, characters that are funny, and then characters who you pity. And I think that does a huge disservice to people with mental health problems who actually live that. So, I mean, the most common thing, particularly in crime, is the psycho killer, and a lot of blurring of the line between do you mean psychopath or do you mean someone with psychosis? Obviously, very different things, but you often have someone who may be killing in a very cold, calculated way, but then having hallucinations or having this dark past that somehow explains all of these difficulties they're having. And I find that really hard to understand why people do that. However, I think we've seen recently some kind of psychopaths done well. I think that's because people have looked to do it differently because it's so common in the genre. So, I mean, Gone Girl is a really good example. Cuckoo's Calling is a really good example as well of two very well done, slightly different, not quite what you'd expect people with psychopathic tendencies, and without going down that, oh, is this psychosis, is this not, route, very clearly. I think the other thing is the kind of the comedy elements. You get a lot of this person's just mad, and that then explains anything they do, and it's like something to explain like wackiness. I think like in Red, which is the film that's based off the comic book, there's a character who's been experimented on with LSD for years and has snapped and then that just gives him license to do anything in that film, and it's really played for humor. I think the other thing is kind of the OCD neat freak, and that goes, oh, your character has to go and get a file from somewhere, and they're met by this person who's really anal retentive and has everything in order, and this is somehow equivalent to obsessive compulsive disorder, which is not, it's nothing like that. I mean, ordering and symmetry and cleanliness can all play a part in OCD, but you don't ever see the distressing anxiety associated with these people. It's all comedy, it's all very superficial comedy. And then there's the pity response, and I think, again, I think there's been a lot of comment, really, not just about mental health, but people with disabilities, really about kind of this inspirational thing that, you know, that like the biopic of Stephen Hawking, and it's like, do people with disabilities exist to be inspirational? And I think that's a really difficult but interesting question, but of course people don't. People exist to be people, and they have lives. And in some ways, that pitying response is quite difficult. You particularly get, I think, writers exaggerating what mental health units or mental health hospitals are like to make characters more pitiable. So, for example, the TV show Sleepy Hollow has a really kind of archaic asylum, like Victorian asylum style mental health hospital, because they want it to be creepy and horrifying, but actually that puts people off. When I say, do you want to come into hospital as a psychiatrist? And they go, no, I've seen what those look like on TV. And like quite a popular crime novel, I'm not going to name names, but recently had a scene, like a sequence about someone who was in a mental health unit, and then just the description of it was horrendous. And it's like, this is nothing like what a mental health unit is like. But it was put in there to make this character's plight much more harrowing. It wasn't necessary, but it was added. And I think when you reduce people to objects of sympathy or pity, then that encourages you to treat them in a way that's not treating them as full people, and I think that's really problematic.
Do you think crime fiction in particular, due to high death rates and murderous individuals, should have a higher awareness of mental health and how it should be represented?
I think what we've witnessed is a lot more people dealing with mental health in crime fiction recently because of the interest in like psychological motivation. I think we, as a culture at the moment, we're really interested in, you know, what makes people tick, why do people do the things they do, and naturally that's come into crime and murder and all of those things, which are obviously really interesting to people, like the most extreme behaviours. Why do people do this? Unfortunately, naturally with that has come these kind of misused explanations for why people do things. It's like, this person killed because they had a mental health problem. And I think we see a lot of stigma, particularly I think you see it a lot in like American police shootings, like people with mental health problems. You see quite a lot of tragic news stories about this happening, and it's the fear. After the German Wings crash, you saw a massive backlash about people with depression. Are they dangerous? Should they have jobs? Should they have responsible jobs? And it's a publicising of cases or fictionalising and therefore emphasising something makes that negative stigma more likely. Of course, things like this do happen. People with mental health problems do commit crimes, but they're far more likely to be victims of crimes. And it's fine if it's a new innovative thing you're doing, but actually, because if when people write the psycho killer, they're contributing to a massive pile of people who've already done it, then that just adds to a stereotype instead of being something new and innovative. And I think, you know, in some ways it's lazy, because once you've got a psycho killer, they don't really need a motive. They don't need a complex reason for killing somebody. They're just mad. And actually, I think we can do better than that. And writers can push themselves more to have a psychological understanding of murder while still being faithful to the realities of mental illness.
And what do you think about novelists who say that the story demands some suspension of disbelief, even around characterisation and what characters would or wouldn't do?
I think suspension of disbelief is really important, but I think what mostly makes suspension of disbelief is feeling realistic and feeling authentic, and actually accuracy in some ways is slightly separate from that. So you can have completely fantastical worlds that have their own internal rules that feel authentic. And I mean, British crime fiction particularly, we get away with a lot of stuff. So New York, serial killers, loads of crime dramas in New York, But they get away with it because America has a fairly high rate of serial killers. British crime fiction writers, we have like nothing to work with here. Like the murder rate is ridiculously low in this country. In Wales, the murder rate for the whole of Wales is about 3 to 5 people per year. I have single-handedly doubled that in the Amy Lane mysteries. You just got nothing to work with. People suspend that disbelief. Midsummer Murders, these tiny villages have like the ridiculous death rate. But you get away with it because it doesn't, you've got that world and it's internally consistent. And when people want to do something with someone with a mental health problem or a problematic personality or however they want to do it, there's often a workaround. So a lot of writers who've come to me saying, oh, I've got this situation and I want this and this to happen, can you help me? I've gone, well, yeah, no, you can do that. That's fine. But actually, how about this? This is the same thing. But we'll take you down a different path, maybe, or we'll do the same effect, but it's slightly more accurate. So, for example, someone had a person who had psychosis and was taking medication, and they wanted her to stop the medication, and they wanted to know what reason she would have for stopping it, and they had come up with some idea that they had thought of. And I was like, well, for example, medications cause weight gain and sedation. Those are really common reasons for people stopping it, and they were like, oh, that's good. My character is a teenage girl. That's going to be really important to her. Thank you. That's really helpful. Whereas actually, you've solved most problems. I mean, medicine is quite variable. There's probably a solution or a workaround that you can do if you wanted to look. And actually, I think having a good research base makes you more creative. Like when you look for things, you actually find a lot more solutions to the problem you were looking for.
So if any writers wanted to learn more about the mental health of their characters, where could they ask you the questions about it?
So I have a regular blog series called Freudian Script, which I have on my website, where I kind of blog about common mental health problems and also how TV shows and films and books are doing well or what they're perhaps doing more poorly and how the mental health system works. We also have a monthly Twitter chat called Psychiatry. Here's one I prepared earlier.
Brilliant, thank you.
And you can keep an eye on that hashtag, and we do a monthly chat about any fiction, mental health and psychology, any questions you might have, and also just, find me on Twitter, Facebook, my website. I'm quite easy to find and contact, and I'm always happy to help people answer questions of realism.
Do you do Psychiatry any particular date of the month?
It's usually the third Tuesday in a month, in the evening, but there's a Facebook page so you can keep updated with when the events are so you don't miss them.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rosie. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Thank you.